Welcome back to the Blissful Badger. Today, I was wanting to share my newest interest, bolt action, and how I'm going about with my collecting. So, this game is a World War II miniatures game, and so I decided I would start with getting a box of the US Airborne because it was an inexpensive box and it gave me 30 hard plastic multi-pose miniatures. And I figured that was a great start to the game. It doesn't give me the rules, it doesn't give me a specific army build or anything like that, but it does give me miniatures by the company, and I can see how I like putting them together and painting them. Since I have a fair understanding of how armies are created through a little bit of research, I figured that just building a 500 point game, 500 point force for a game, would be a decent start. And of course, since I don't know anyone who actually plays bolt action around me, it made sense to also have some French infantry. So I can make a French army and have some options. And I decided I would go with Wargames Atlantic here to try out their models while I'm at it. Because if it is a 28mm historical mini, I mean, they're French. These guys are French Army. These guys are US Airborne. And since I got the French Army, I decided we might be fighting in France. So I grabbed the French Resistance Partisans box as well. So now I have 2 boxes from Wargames Atlantic, 1 box from Warlord Games, and I have 97 miniatures to build and paint and see what I like and what I don't like of these forces. All 3 boxes should be able to make a 500 point or thereabouts force, and that way I can have versus games that are not always the same. So that was a very important aspect as well for me. I did not want to just have 2 forces, one of which may or may not be stronger than the other or have a hard counter. This way I can kind of do rock, paper, scissors with these armies. Now, there are a lot of alternative options for bolt action, and there are quite a few different ways to expand the different armies. Notably, I don't have any mortars or tanks in here, but I should be able to build some snipers and some rocket launchers on some of these and machine guns, whether it's a light machine gun or a medium machine gun. There should be some options there. And so I want to see how they work together and what they look like on the table. And then I will just need to find an opponent. But the first step is I need to see what these look like. The Warlord Games US Airborne box comes with 5 identical sprues with 6 bodies each. There are quite a few different options for M1 Garands and Thompsons, and a 30 cal LMG, and a BAR, and quite a few different other added bits, like multiple different heads, and even a pigeon. Overall, these are decent plastic minis, and they look like they'll have quite a few different options in how I can pose them, make them unique. there is even one prone body per sprue. So that'll probably be light machine guns and snipers. The Wargames Atlantic French Army comes with 5 identical sprues of 7 bodies with quite a few different weapon options, multiple heads, and different firearms and different weapons of the time. There are even gas masks. And to go along with each of these sprues, there is a half sprue with additional heads, backpacks, and firearms. So there are quite a few different options here for my French infantry. When going to the French resistance, on the other hand, there are 8 sprues of 4 bodies each. There are a good number of heads and weapon options, but it's nowhere near the same as you would expect in the French infantry. But these are partisans, they are resistance, and so there is a certain level of lacking in options that kind of makes sense because these guys could easily pick up a different weapon that was laying in a battlefield situation. So we'll see if these and the Warlords games can be used together. Now, Wargames Atlantic does have the small base plastic, whereas the Warlord game does not. But we'll see how close these arms are between the different sets when we get to building. For now, they both look like decent plastic. They both have quite a few different options, and I am looking forward to building these up. So, while building, I want to point out a few things about these these 3 kits. One, the heads for the Wargames Atlantic models are interchangeable, being that they are a peg going into a rounded neck area on the head, whereas the bolt action is the opposite, with the neck itself being the ball socket and the head going into it. So the heads are not interchangeable, but I did note that the arm option was not too far out of scale for the width. With a little bit of green stuff, that gap could theoretically be filled. And I'm sure that the individual arms would work because they look quite close in scale overall. Perhaps the Wargames Atlantic being slightly larger, even though the body is not as wide. And then I also noted that the backpack from Warlord Games could theoretically work on the Partisan. So that could be interesting. So I'm going to finish these up, and I'll catch you in a few. Alright, I have my first model of each of these sets built. So I have the Warlords games, the Wargames Atlantic French Infantry, and the Wargame Atlantic French partisan. Scale-wise, they are all very, very close to each other. There shouldn't be any issue whatsoever with this variation. If anything, they're too close to the same height for realistic human body shapes. So I'm pretty happy with that. Of course, I need to rebase these to be on 25mm rounds, which will place them slightly taller, but not by too much. And I think they'll look really nice painted up. So now I just have to build the other 94 models. All right. One final thought before I leave. This particular kit does not mention which is the left and which is the right arm. I ended up having to clean 3 before I found the 4th that was the right one for this. So, just as a heads up, this Partisan's kit does not specify which arms go together. Other than that, pretty cool. Subscribe if you haven't so that you don't miss any future videos. I also want to thank my patrons and supporters for making these videos possible. And until next time, I hope you find your bit of bliss.